Hi everyone. So today we're going to talk about moving your U2 REST application to Rocket Multi-Value Integration Server. For those of you who don't already know me, my name is Stuart McKenzie and I'm a Principal Support Engineer for Mvis Tools and I'm based in Denver, Colorado. So in this first presentation, we're going to do a comparison between U2 RESTful and Multi-Value Integration Server. Look at REST servers, resource folders and accounts, the data and subroutine resources and dynamic arrays that we define within REST servers. Also look at access control and HTTP users. After that, we're going to move on and actually export a few RESTful servers from the RESTful server development tool, and then we're going to import those into Mvis, see how to go about doing that, and then finally create accounts to link those imported service definitions so that we can access them via the UI. So first of all, a comparison of U2 REST and Mvis. So within U2 REST, you can define multiple REST servers. That's slightly different with Mvis because with Mvis, each installation is a REST server. You can install as many copies of Mvis as you want to one U2 server. Within U2 RESTful, you can create multiple resource folders within each individual REST server, and each resource folder is linked to a multi-value server account. Within Mvis, it is one REST server, and you can define multiple accounts, which are then linked to the multi-value server account. On the left-hand side here, we see U2 REST. We've got our REST servers defined, 4 of them there, and then underneath each REST server are resource folders where we would store our data, subroutine resources, and dynamic arrays. If you look on the right-hand side, as I said, Mvis is one REST server, so we define accounts, and those accounts then are linked to the resources that apply to each account. So here on this slide, we've just expanded things a little bit. On the left-hand side, we can see the data resources, subroutines, and dynamic arrays. And similarly, on the right-hand side, if we drill down into an account, we can see the same information presented in Mvis. So then moving on to access controls. We've got our roles defined here on the left-hand side for U2 REST, right-hand side for Mvis, and really this is pretty much identical except for how it's stored. Roles will be stored per REST server. Of course, Mvis is one REST server, so we're going to have one file underneath that's going to store all of the roles. So the same with HTTP users, same as roles. User interfaces are fairly similar. You can see how all the information ties together, but behind the scenes, you've got HTTP users per REST server. On Mvis, we've only got one file to contain the HTTP users. So taking a look at the file structures that are underneath, on the left-hand side is U2 REST. We've got a folder for each one of our REST servers. You drill down into the REST server, so we drill down into dev there. You've got the myapp.json.xml file, .xml file, that contain our data resources, subroutine resources, and dynamic arrays. And then we've got dev.acl and dev.realm, which contain our roles and our HTTP users. Move over to the right-hand side, which is Mvis. We've actually named our services definition file dev_my_app. We'll learn the reason for that later on. But you can see that instead of having a REST server, we just have files for each of the accounts that we've defined. And then looking at the top there, we've got our .acl and .realm files. Once again, this is for the entire server. So for all of these accounts, that would be defined in those two files. So now that we've looked at some of the differences or similarities between U2 REST and Mvis, we can do a hands-on demonstration where we're going to take one REST server from U2 REST that contains multiple resources, and we're going to import that into Mvis. So starting off in the RESTful Web Services Developer tool, we're going to export the REST server UV localhost, which contains two resource folders, and they both contain some data resources. So if we right-click on the REST server, click on Export, and we're happy with what's there. It's selected one REST server. This is the file that it's going to output. Click on Finish. Okay, so now let's go and have a look at that. Got our zip file there. And now we're going to go to Mvis and import the REST server. So if we go to the REST server section, go to Export/Import. I'm going to import an Mvis REST config. Choose the file, UV localhost. It is a deployment from the RESTful Services tool. Now we're going to specify the server name that we're importing. Click on OK and import, and that's it done. So now it's not actually the final step. Go and have a look at the U2 REST folder within Mvis. It's imported the resources, but we need to create an account within Mvis to link to the database. Okay, so back to configuration. Go to Accounts, select Add an Account. First account we're going to add, UVHS Sales. We need localhost. Accept the default port. We're going to change the protocol to REST. And we want to get the account string, the path, enter that in there. It is Universe that we're using in this example. And then I need a user ID to connect to the multi-value server. Enter in our password. And we're going to switch SSL to disabled. We're not trying to demonstrate that just now. And that should be it. So we can test the connection. Oh, I didn't save the account name when I entered it there. Enter that, click on OK. Managed to get a space or something in front of that. Click on OK, and now test connection. It was successful, so click on OK there. I'd like to restart that one, say yes. See the status will change here in a second. And now we've got one more account to add. So this one's UV_xdemo. on OK. Server name, still localhost. Change to REST. And the account path. Once again, the username and password. And disable SSL. And test that again. Okay, so now we've got the account there as well. Click on OK, and then we'll restart that account as well. Okay, so now the account should be available in the REST server. Come back over here, let's close that section, expand accounts, and we can see that we have our data resources. There weren't any subroutines in this REST server, so we've got our data resources for both of those. If we want to go and test one of those, click on the Swagger icon, bring up Swagger UI, and I can go and run get members, try it out, execute, and there it's brought back our members. Okay, so that's how simple it is to export and import a REST server into Mvis. So in our next demonstration, we're going to export multiple REST servers from U2 REST, and those REST servers contain duplicate resource folder names, and we're going to import those into Mvis and see how we handle doing that. So in this demonstration, we're going to import multiple REST servers, dev, live, and test. And you'll notice that they've all got a resource folder called My App. So I'm going to show you how you can handle that. So let's just take a look at dev first of all. And so we've got data resources, subroutine resources, and we've also got dynamic arrays. Also, we have access control defined, so there's a bunch of roles, and we have HTTP users defined for this REST server. Okay, so I'm going to click on REST servers and export. I don't want UV localhost. Change the name of this file to all_my_app. Finish. That's the export done. File should be there. There it is. So now let's go over to Mvis and import those REST servers. REST server. Choose a file. It's deployment from RESTful Services tool. And the REST server we're importing is dev. Okay, so that's done. So now let's go and have a look what it brought over for us. So this is the U2 REST folder for Mvis, and you can see it's brought in My App, and it's also brought in the roles and the HTTP users. Okay, so going back to My App, we've got a bit of a problem here because when I go to import the next REST server, it's going to have the same My App. So I'm going to change the name here, dev_my app. This is one way you can do this. There's another way that I'll show you in just a minute. It's a bit of an edge case, but I've actually seen it come in a support case for Mvis. Okay, so I've renamed that, and now we need to go and add the account. So back to Mvis, configuration, accounts, add an account. So I'm going to call this dev_myapp, and that links it to the resource. Change it to REST. The account path. And the user password. And disable SSL. Okay, so before I go and test the connection, the other way of doing this, instead of, you can actually name the account name anything you like. If you come into the optional settings here, there's a service definition name. So I renamed the files to dev_my_app, and if I entered that in there, then that would create that link to the between the account and the resource file. So that's another way of doing the same thing. Let's go and test the connection. It's all good. Okay, and restart that account. Okay. Okay, now let's go to the REST server and see what it's brought in for us. Okay, so we've got our account there. Before we go and look at what was imported, I'm going to go and have a look at the REST server security configuration. So we defined access control. So there are the roles that were brought in. There's one thing we got to change here though. It's no longer, the path is no longer myapp members, so we're going to need to change that. So it's dev_myapp. Okay, so now we've got the correct path. And it also brought in the HTTP users. Okay, so let's take a look at my app. There's our data resources. Had some subroutines, and we also had a dynamic array in there as well. Now we can go and run any of these using Swagger. So let's run the Swagger and do get members. Try it out. Let's execute that. And so it wants me to authenticate. So okay, so now I've signed in, and here you go. It's brought back all the members. So I didn't think you would really want to watch me import the other two REST servers. So I've done that. I've renamed the service definition files and given the account the same name to create the link that way. So that's that done. Now let's go and have a quick look at the REST servers. So just have a look at dev_myapp. See, we've got subroutines in there. We've got dynamic arrays. Go and edit the dynamic array. And you can see how that's defined, very similar to U2 RESTful. And also have a subroutine. Haven't got any code in there, code's on the server. So define the input and output variables and dynamic arrays in there. Let's go and quickly test that via Swagger. So you'll note that for subroutines at the moment, we only have a post method. That'll change in 1.30, we'll support all of the methods for subroutines. Okay, let's try this one out. execute that, and that's the dynamic array being returned from that subroutine. Okay.